Awesome. Can everyone see my shared screen? Cool.
Yes.
Yeah, so I wanted to take this time to, well, first introduce myself and also to just talk about the general overview of the product development program and services that I will be working on building and offering in the next couple of weeks and months. There will be a couple more pieces that will roll in after, the first services roll out. So I wanted to touch on some of those in case that leads into some questions that you might want to ask. So a little bit about me. I came straight from Oregon most recently, and my educational background is both in nutrition. I'm a trained dietitian to be, and also a food scientist. So food science master's from Oregon State most recently. My my work background mostly have spanned R&D in mid-sized startup scale companies from Nona Lim, where we created bone broths and ramen soup products, both in refrigerated and frozen aisles, to Pan's Mushroom Jerky, which is a snack brand. I've also had projects on different instant ramen categories, frozen desserts, ice creams, coffee, ready-to-drink products, and also milling of grains and flours and testing functionalities of those, as well as a lot of baking. Um, and I've also worked with the Stanford Food Design Lab more on the innovation big picture front, as well as a very different stint as a Chinese Olympic rowing sports dietitian for their Tokyo cycle. So as you can tell, nutrition is a big part of what I do with food product development. So as well as agriculture and the fostering a circular and sustainable local food economy and agriculture. And I wanted to just touch on my approach. I am very people-based, people-centered. If we work together, I'd like to, get to know your story, your brand, and the message you want to share first, and really try to let it breathe and convey through your product when people taste it and grab it from the shelf. And how can we formulate and create the packaging to let that shine? And jumping into the PD services that we will be offering, it'll come in a few different modes. One-on-one consultation, which means we sit down and we dive into your product, and mostly through the meeting, we will tackle kind of the advising and we can go into references and connections and go over things just in a meeting setting. And then a more expansive project-based work will be through the benchtop product development process, where we will also scope out the project you want to work on, whether it's troubleshooting the formula or identifying ingredient sources that work best for your process, or scaling up into equipment we might have in the center that would fall under a scoped project proposal. And I can go a little bit more into that in the next slide. We also offer analytical testing standalone if your product is applicable to a pH testing and monitoring. We can offer that standalone. These are all also on our website. So if you wanted to go on the word hawaii.edu/VAPDC, you can find all these information. I also know that the HPP has a lot of interest from some of our companies. We will be offering that, and as well as the training in the coming months. So one of some of the questions in the previously submitted have mentioned whether we offer sensory testing and analytical testing as well as nutritional label. And the answer is yes to the analytical testing, which includes pH, water activity, and Brix measurements, and as well as nutritional label, both review and generation. So we will update through our email, and if you can submit an intake form after this, we will roll that out into our newsletters. We will be updating you when all of these are available. And then lastly, just touching on if we were to sit down and work on a project together, slightly more long-term, as in if we were to troubleshoot a formula together. For example, if your baked good is not keeping long enough that you would like, potentially we would be doing some testing and reformulating a little bit and testing on some different packaging modalities. We would sit down and work on a scope proposal and then choose a deliverable and a timeline, and we would share the cost as well. So a few different ways that you can work with product development at the center. And if you have more questions, feel free to drop it in the chat, ask during the session, or send an email to the VAPDC general email that's on our website. And I will hand that back to Naomi.
Thanks, Hailey. And just for those who haven't joined us before, to clarify what the Value-Added Product Development Center offers. So we offer product development, consultation, and testing services, as Hailey mentioned. We also have shared commercial kitchens and packaging equipment that folks can rent, and we provide the training on the safe use of the equipment as well as cleaning procedures. And thirdly, we also offer a variety of programs. So we are part of Leeward Community College and partner closely with a lot of departments within the college, such as the Office of Workforce Development for our Aina Tumakeke program. And we also offer one-off workshops. So if you're kind of interested in what value added is, or just need something fun to do for a couple hours one day, every month we offer hands-on value-added workshops where we have someone who is a food entrepreneur do a demo, and it's a lot of fun. Usually you get to sample products and have something that you made yourself to take home. So jumping back into the questions, folks feel free to submit questions in the Q&A. To kick things off, I'll ask some questions that were submitted through registration. So Hailey, you mentioned your experience through various companies and both in product innovation as well as nutrition. Could you please share some of the specific products you helped develop and some quick tips for aspiring food producers?
Sounds great. Thank you, Naomi. I will share, one example is Pants Mushroom Jerky, which is a shiitake mushroom jerky product. I joined the team and they already have a viable product that's very popular. I joined the team to create different flavor line extensions. Consistently every year, we launch about 3 new products. So I work on the innovation calendar. That's something that I think may be more relevant as brands grow and attend trade shows where buyers will come back and look for new products, and you get a lot of traction if you prove that you're consistently rolling out new product. And for example, we worked on different flavors of the jerky, so just the seasoning innovation, and also based on feedback from buyers and consumers, I worked on changing the added sugar over to no added sugar by using whole fruit sweetener, things like that. And also at Nono Lim, we worked on different packaging varieties with bone broth. So for example, an innovation is a heat and sip cup. So it looks like a coffee mug, but it's microwavable bone broth that you can sip at your desk, and making sure that the product fit within that and with the packaging, and it would preserve the shelf life. Would it be impacted was something I worked on. So a good variety of span of projects that is very cross-functional with packaging, marketing, food safety, etc. And then you asked some tips for startup food entrepreneurs. Well, from a product perspective, I think something I tell everyone is that as we're making small batches, it's a good practice to always keep in mind and doing either the thought exercise or the benchtop exercise to think to see how simple you can get your formula down to. Say if you're shrub currently uses 10 ingredients. Are they all necessary? If we were to run into a supply chain issue and half of the ingredients are really hard to source, can you still get the soul of your product in half of that? And especially for something like a baked good, a snack good, clean label is a big trend, and of course, supply chain. So the easier, the more simple your list of ingredients are, and the more straightforward the process is, the easier to scale it up. So along those lines, also think through if this is the process you're making it at home, small batch or a small kitchen, do you know what equipment you would need to scale that up 100 times batch? Does that still look the same? Can you still do a 5-step process, or does it all need to be drilled down to 2-step for it to make sense? That is one. And then let's see. Also, just in general, being agile and ready to iterate, being ready for change. If, you come into the center and test a couple equipment and realize that the same formula or the same product won't be viable on a larger scale, and perhaps changing the form factor a little bit, being open to that would be really helpful to um, assist with the scale up process. And then also just knowing that does your ingredient sources come in wholesale bulk options, so that you're not going to the store to buy a bunch of things when you do something like made in Hawaii.
Awesome tips. Thank you, Haley. So you had mentioned shelf life, which several folks ask upon registration some questions about shelf life. How do you determine shelf life of products? Is there a scientific way to test?
Thank you. Great question. Also get that question a lot from different product types. So I think that the first thing I want people to know that shelf life testing and scientific testing, including microbial testing. So, when it does spoil, what are the spoilage bacteria that's causing the spoilage? That kind of testing is not actually required by FDA in order to decide and put the shelf life on the packaging. Now, with that said, it is your responsibility to make sure that safe and quality food is delivered within the shelf life that you claim. So, with a high risk product, you may want to also set up a recall plan. But for starters, at the stage that our brands are all at, we suggest that you do a shelf life determination based on historical data and competitive analysis. So, which means going to the store and looking at the label of a similar product and how long they claim for it to last. And based on knowing your own product, what happens when it starts breaking down. Usually we see that across many different categories, a product might get rancid before it spoils, or a buttermilk cheese texture might be compromised before it spoils. So a lot of the sensory qualities might deteriorate before the food safety part. So it's very much a choose your own adventure until you can have access to some of the testings like chemical stability testing like pH, water activity, and sugar concentration, which we call Brix level. And so we offer those testings. And if some of the meters are affordable at a handheld scale, so you can, if you have a acidified beverage or preserve, that might make sense to really know your pH. It might be a good investment to get that tested or get a meter yourself. And when you have those parameters, there are categories like acidified food and low acid food, and there are slightly different requirements, and only becomes relevant if you are to can it and to make it shelf stable. And in that case, we have pasteurization as an option, hot fill, and sterilizing the bottle as an option. And then I'm not sure what product we're talking about here, but for example, I know Jamie from 3 Spoonfuls of Sugar submitted a question, and for a fruit butter or curd product, it will most likely fall into the acidified food category, which means pH lower than 4.6. And you have a lot of options from there because a lower pH helps preserve shelf life and help pathogens not being able to survive. And you can always keep it refrigerated, frozen as you are right now. And if you want to go shelf stable, uh, we can explore cans, PET bottles, and that would need it to be pasteurized. And I just wanted to throw a caveat in there. We will plug resources and educational trainings with food safety, just like we had last VA 101 workshop was with food safety experts. For specifically shelf life, Better Process Control School is a great resource. And for acidified canned foods like the curd product or fruit butter product, I suggest working with a process authority in order to submit your FDA paperwork, um, if that helps.
Yeah, thank you. So shelf life testing, it really is category specific, and there's microbiological testing to consider as far as food safety goes, but there's also the sensory properties of a product to consider where it may not make you sick, but it just doesn't taste as good as it does when it's fresh. So
Speaking of, I wanted to add one more thing. So I touched on sensory, microbial. You can always send your product out for lab testing, and they may not be affordable. They may be, there may be a spectrum of a pricing depending on, if you have the bandwidth to and how priority it is. I just wanted to liberalize that by saying that shelf life proof is not required by FDA. But in-house, you can do a lot of things to test your shelf life because the sensory qualities usually deteriorate. And if it spoils, it's pretty visible. So by doing that, I suggest companies retain at least 10 samples, 10 packaged product every batch that you run if you don't have a good grasp of your current shelf life. So if you create a batch of 100 product, maybe save 5 to 10 and decide on a schedule that you would sit down and do the tasting and the evaluation, whether it's every week, every 2 weeks, every month, so that you can, based on the suggested storage condition, you can do an in-house real life shelf life testing by yourself. And you can send the product out for accelerated shelf life testing, which in simple terms, the incubation temperature gets dialed up, and based on kinetics of how temperature changes deterioration, the higher the temperature, the faster your food supposedly spoil. And this doesn't apply to frozen food, for example, which is something we will consider offering accelerated shelf life testing. And that's something that labs usually offer. But if you have the time, I'd say retain some samples and do a real life tasting, which I know some of you already do.
So looking at some of the questions that folks have submitted live and segueing from our discussion about shelf life. So Mark from Makaha Mangoes, he said that he does a lot of, or he has a lot of off-grade mango now, and is looking for storage of processed pickled mango. He also makes fruit leather from mango and frozen puree. And Mark, feel free to unmute yourself and chime in if you wanted to elaborate on your question.
Yeah, so I guess the big thing right now is when we're doing the fruit leather, I think the biggest concern with quality on the fruit leather is the water activity. And that's something that we haven't been able to do at the home kitchen. So that's something I think we're gonna come up to you to get some check on that. And I guess related to the question is, you're in Wahiawā, so the neighbor island people and the other people that are doing the fruit leather, how is that going to get pushed down so that we can check the water activity at the home kitchen level? Bricks is pretty simple. We use the hydrometer, and pH is pretty simple. So water activity is the biggest challenge, I think, for us.
So we will have our water activity meter in shortly. We will update folks when we can offer all of those package of testing. So definitely welcome to send samples over so we can do the tests for you, whether you're on island or neighboring island, or multiple batches, depending on, if you're on a neighboring island and it makes sense to send different variations of a recipe, or potentially you can do a shelf life test and label the product as, this is my fruit leather done in recipe 1, stored after 30 days in room temperature. And if you have humidity and temperature measurements at home, that's helpful too. And we can test water activity all in one batch, and that may provide more data than if you're not close by and bringing samples all the time. Does that help? You're muted, I think, Mark.
Yeah, you anticipate people bringing in samples to test routinely, then that's going to be a service that's going to be an ongoing thing. It's just not going to be a one-time test. And I think that's helpful. I don't know how we do it though. I mean, do we just come in and you're going to be able to do it all the time? I just don't see how you're going to be able to do that.
No, I think it will be a one session thing, but if you can batch the samples up in one time go, then it will be more affordable and provide more data in one go.
Got it.
Yeah, so we'll schedule testing one at a time, but if,
multiple samples.
yeah, exactly. So if you can batch up multiple samples, we can test them in one go for you, and it will be more cost effective for you.
Got it.
Yeah. And I think that's kind of where the product development consultation comes into play as well, too, right? Where Hailey can hear what your goals and challenges are, and then be able to consult on how you might be able to meet those objectives. And if it's something you need to do routine testing on, then she can also advise on if it makes sense for you to do that on your own, or what that looks like specifically.
I'm getting the impression this is all new to everybody. And I think some of this stuff is available online available in state elsewhere. But we're just not coordinated at this point. I'm hopeful that we will be.
I believe that we have at least a handful of labs in state that can offer some of these testing already, and I will try to collect the resources and share out as a resource hub, in case our meters don't come in time and you wanted to get that done ASAP, we can also refer labs that I come across. I think that would be really helpful. And I actually had the pleasure of trying the mango leather through Candy, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. It was delicious. And something to consider also for water activity is that, how you're packaging it. If it's moisture proof, right? If they're just open to air, they will increase in water activity over a couple of days.
Right.
Testing different packaging option is something also to consider.
Big time. Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, and great point that you brought up, Mark, that there are resources across the state, kind of disconnected somewhat, but we are working toward building that Hawaii Food Innovation Network. So, I see folks from the Maui Food Innovation Center on the call today. Hey, thanks for joining. And see Susan from Hawaii Island, Hawaii Community College on here as well. So actively working with the other food innovation centers, existing and future, throughout the university CC system. So looking at some other questions that folks submitted live. So Kevin asked about health claims. So can you talk about how you approach making health claims when developing products? He says he has a family recipe that has the potential to go beyond their kitchen. And if you type the key components into Google Scholar, there's definitely solid evidence of benefits. But are there downsides to making these benefits part of the marketing and development?
Great question. Thank you, Kevin. So I would say that wording is very tricky, and that's where a lot of brands tread the line of, asking for what's the word? Just going in the gray area and given some research and they can back those claims on the website. However, I think that the wording minutia is very, very important where, for example, if you had a ashwagandha beverage with herbal ingredients in them that have in the extracted form have shown some association to anti-cancer properties, doesn't mean that you should be saying on the label helps fight against cancer, plain and simple. So I think that based on the research that you do find, and if you feel like it's strong enough to make that as part of your brand marketing, to make the wording very, very careful. The health claim regulations cover a lot of the bases, but not as much as the new and up and coming herbal ingredients. So depending on what ingredient you're using, that might carry those health claims. We can go over if there are rules that help guide what claims are in the gray area, what claims can you make. Now, backtracking a little bit from I just know a little bit more about your idea. So a lot of the herbal supplements aren't being regulated. So that's where people are a little more gray area. Now with the micronutrients and macronutrients, you can definitely make claims where it's high in vitamin B or high in iron or low sodium, etc. So these adjectives are regulated as in when you're claiming low, it has to be 10% or 20% of the daily below 10% or above 20% of the daily intake, depending on the nutrient, whether the FDA has deemed it bad, like sodium or saturated fat, or good nutrients like fiber and other vitamins. So there are clear and cut rules for nutrients like that, but for a functional benefit, it's a little bit gray, and we can definitely talk about what kind of messaging keeps you safe. And, citing resources is always helpful, but consumers only get 5 seconds to look at your product. And, depending on just like the health inspection, depending on the regulator, they can have a longer conversation with you depending on the claim. Yeah. So I think it's case dependent and definitely depends on whether this health ingredient is newer or well studied or more of a
Is
trend.
antioxidant in the gray area more functional, or does it call closer to macronutrients? Because I feel like I can't go anywhere in the grocery store without seeing the word antioxidant anymore.
Yeah, antioxidant is something that exists. That is a compound. So if it contains antioxidant, you can definitely see that. But whether the claim is about this antioxidant will reduce your blood sugar and cure diabetes, that is a claim that I'd say be careful about. For example, I know we have a couple of Mamaki tea brands on our portfolio already in our cohorts, and it's such an important ingredient to our island. So the research has been showing a lot of blood sugar reduction benefits. I think that's something to be able to claim, but with research and proving it the right way. Yeah. So and then that's more so about the wording of it doesn't treat diabetes, but have shown benefits to lower blood sugar, may lower blood sugar, and a little bit more word tricks like that. That's a little bit more on the packaging side, but I think that we can help navigate health claim regulations from the FDA website on the CFR.
I think I see a related question in the on the difference between nutrition facts and supplement facts. They kind of look the same, right?
Yeah, great question. So for a nutrition facts label, it covers your macronutrients, calories, protein, carbohydrates, fats, and then a required subsection of micronutrients. So 4 vitamins and minerals that you're required to, and you can always add more if your product's high in zinc. That's not required. And so for a supplement fact, you're actually not required to list the the macronutrients like the fats and the protein, just the calorie contribution and the active ingredient. So that's where it differs, and it's regulated by a different body.
Awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, and one of the services that we will offer is nutrition labeling, so the label generation as well as review. Related question that was submitted through registration from an attendee is, what are some common federal guidelines, documents, or foundation level compliance documents that small business owners should know about?
Thank you. So things that, for starters, that, apologies, are good to know is being familiar with definitely the FSMA, which is the Food Safety Modernization Act. That includes the good manufacturing practices, the food safety plan that encapsulates also the HACCP plan that a lot of you have had questions on how to write that and to review that. And then as well as if we were to import products or ingredients, a foreign supplier verification program. So that's definitely documentation to be familiar with, and making sure that requirements from your facility or product perspective you have in place. And then HACCP plan, not having the plan isn't sufficient. You also should be monitoring and documenting your hazards and control points regularly in order to show documentation upon an inspection or facilities inspection, etc. And then speaking of facility, if you are moving from a cottage to a commercial kitchen, registering the food facility with the FDA is important, and also doing your due diligence with DOH inspections. And also falling within the compliance area, just making sure that your product label is compliant with FDA requirements, especially as you go onto store shelves. There are some leniency with selling directly at farmers market. You're not required to, depending on the organization, especially to have the full nutritional label and the product label with where it's manufactured, date codes. But of course, as you go on shelves, those are all required, and going through the exercise of making sure that they look like what other products on the shelf look like, or going through the regulation with those examples will be important as you both pitch to buyers and also get ready to sell to stores. And then I think more just due diligence for yourself, recall plans if you have a more higher risk product that potentially your shelf life is still in the gray, setting that up as you're setting up shelf life testing, it may be helpful. You may never use that document that you develop, but it's always good to have in place. Also helps with inspections and certifications. Those are some things off the top of my head.
Yeah, definitely great to be aware of all of those. And as you mentioned, it does depend on who you're selling to, and what your distribution looks like, because the regulations won't be the same for somebody who is selling directly to consumer at their farmer's market and they have a not potentially hazardous food, versus someone who might be selling nationwide. So definitely need to consider all of those variables, but I'm glad you listed all of these considerations just to get it on people's radar. So referring to the chat, so Kevin asked a follow-up question about how much you charge for consulting, and is there any part of your program that connects new entrepreneurs to potential investors or funding? And I can jump in too if you like, but I'll let you answer first, Hailey.
Sounds good. I'll cover part of this and Naomi can jump in. Kevin, having chatted with you a little bit, the Aina to Makeke program may be a good fit. So there's a few different pathways to work with our product development department. To consult directly, it is an hourly charge. Have we released the fee structure? Not yet, Naomi?
Not officially.
Okay,
It
I
will be
see.
posted on the website soon. Yeah.
Yes, it'll be by the hour, and we'll release the fee structure in the coming weeks. And as we get our meters in and get our lab set up, and then, of course, we can work on project too on the longer term, a couple weeks at a time, working on the formula, working on the packaging, working on adapting your home batch to our commercial kitchen. Those are all umbrellaed under the PD services. However, if this is a concept that hasn't been scaled up or hasn't been sold, hasn't had sales yet, I suggest Aina Tumekeke as a great incubation pathway that we offer. It's a 12-week evening course program, weekly courses. And at the end, you'll be pitching to Foodlands, Chef Zone buyers, and have a great business plan in place. And we just had our Made in Hawaii section with all of our Aina Tumekeke, some of our Aina Tumekeke graduates. I think that, and they also get 1 hour free R&D consulting and just a lot of Q&A along their course of during the 12 weeks. I think a lot of product development questions can be answered while they're in course. So if this is a really early concept that hasn't been in the market yet, I suggest that pathway. And we also get subsidized kitchen pricing, kitchen use, hourly rental price if you are a incubation pathway. So all of those will be posted, if not already, on the website, including the fee structure. So Kevin, I think that there's a couple options you can pursue on the consultation front.
Yeah, and to build onto that, so as far as connecting you as an entrepreneur to potential funding sources, or like how you even go about that, not to put you on the spot, Larry, but I see Larry Nagayama from the SBDC on the line. So that's the Small Business Development Center. So they have business advisors, including Larry, who you can schedule time with to talk about your business plan, potential funding sources. We also have a small business fair coming up at LCC. It's on September 28th. That's a Saturday. So Chris Bailey, the manager of the Wahiawā Value Added Product Development Center, will be there, but there will also be a lot of other folks from different organizations locally who will be present, and it's a great way to make connections and find out what resources are out there.
And if any of you in the audience haven't come out to the center, we are open to scheduled tours. It might help with asking some of your questions here as well if it's not answered here, or they come up in the future email or coming out to visit. It's a great way.
That's right. So to take a step back from some of these more technical questions and go back to a bit more about you personally, Hailey. So you mentioned that you have experience in Oregon, as well as a few other locations worldwide, actually. And now you're here in Hawaii, in Wahiawā specifically. So what motivated you to make the decision to move out here, and what are you excited about getting involved in the community?
Thank you for that question, Naomi. So this has to be probably my dream job and what I have always wanted to do when I get an opportunity like this. So I feel very lucky and honored to be working with you and all of you small local entrepreneurs. I think that, you know, what excites me the most is the opportunity to work with and empower small entrepreneurs in the packaged food sector. And I can devote all of my work into empowering and supporting and the scale up process, the troubleshooting, the helping to conceptualize, finding a fit, especially with the purpose of supporting local agriculture, using ingredients from our land that grows and feed people here, and to, you know, the term value added is so that our packaged food product will generate more revenue and money back to fund the land that grows our food. And I think that's such a grand mission, and I feel very committed and passionate about it. And I hope, and I'm super excited also to be able to use this opportunity to learn many different product categories, a lot of which I have not had experience in, but I feel confident that, you know, with my devoted attention to research that and iterate with you, that we can, you know, get to where we need to go. I think that that's just such a huge learning opportunity for me, and just is my personal mission to do this exact work. So I feel very blessed to be able to work with you. So I am really excited to meet some of you and all of you in the near future. Yeah.
Yeah, and the team was just at Made in Hawaii. So I know we all got a chance to try a lot of different local products. We're basically eating nonstop all weekend and talking to folks. So great way to just dive in. Super basic question, but what does value added mean to you, Hailey? And folks on the call, please feel free to add in your personal definition of what value added means in the chat.
Yeah. So for me, it just, I mean, it could mean so many things on different layers, but speaking from my product perspective, value added value added means to me that the value from the ingredient gets multiplied and elevated and stretched to a wider footprint over longer shelf life, so that it brings back the money that that multiplies from what it's cost, what the ingredient, what ulu or kalo might cost directly to be sold as a crop. So I think that if you know, the vision for value added products are to be able to scale and create different levels of products to be able to share our crops with our local residents and people abroad.
Got it. So yeah, that definitely relates to our mission of supporting local agriculture and promoting economic diversification, right? Where in Hawaii, you know, everyone's all about the omiyage culture, right? Anytime you go over to someone's house, you got to bring something. Anytime you go to visit family or friends on the mainland or, you know, anywhere, then generally you would take something with you. I know even visiting my grandpa in Maui, we always need to bring things that you can only get on Oahu and take it over to his house. So Hailey, you mentioned value added could mean making it so that you can take it somewhere where it lasts longer, it will survive the trip. So definitely aligned with you in that definition of value added.
I see some great points in the chat as well. So using every bit of the product, no waste. There's a term also in the, you know, food industry or maybe wider called upcycling. So we're doing a lot of that here already, both in our cohorts and in the wider food industry that I've seen so far, using scraps, waste streams of agricultural production to making new products like Hawaii Vinegar Co. They're using surplus fruits, vegetables, our Tapachi brand, many of you in the audience, I am sure. And also Daphne mentioned value added as longer lasting enjoyment. So that touches on shelf life, also creating different categories of products that taps the functionality of different crops and ingredients, like breadfruit as a starchier vegetable fruit, and being able to use it as flour, being able to tap that functionality to create different sub-ingredients for other things, and just opens up possibility to use what we have grown here than to import everything to create the trees that we're familiar with.
Yeah, so see, folks, you can still submit questions if you have them, but going back to the Q&A, I see Christine asked a question about how can entrepreneurs on the neighbor islands participate in the program? Do they need to come in person to explore value-added opportunities for their products?
So with the kitchen space is the only thing that you need to be in person to probably use to produce. Otherwise, our services will all be offered virtually as well. So whether product development or business or these shelf analytical testing, if needed a pH tested, you can always send it through, from my perspective, at least.
Yeah, and we offer, in addition to that, we offer these Zooms monthly as a way for anyone across the state and even beyond to be able to join in, get a chance to ask questions, get exposed to different elements of food product development, whether that's on the innovation, ideation side, or regulatory, marketing. We've had guest speakers touching upon all of these topics. And if you do find yourself on Oahu, definitely stop by and visit. We've had several groups come through, including teachers who have taken what they've seen here at the center and kind of taken it and adapted it for their classrooms and are able to relate that into what they do at their respective schools.
I see a question in the chat from April. Do you need lab testing for calorie contribution initially, or can you do estimates? You do not need lab testing for calories unless you have a very particular products, for example, a fried product or a fermented product that changes that your input isn't equal to your output. For example, kombucha, your sugar that you put in gets fermented over time. So your final product is lesser sugar than the sugar that you put in. So the calories consequently will be lower than your initial formula. In that case, it would be helpful to get a lab testing. And if your product is not one of those scenarios where you're probably what you put in is what you get out, you can definitely estimate and we can help you with generating the label.
Thanks. And in the chat, I see that Peter asked, how do we schedule a visit? So I'm going to drop in our Calendly link to schedule a tour, as well as our email address.
So I think also in terms of what next, if you wanted to work with us on your product development front, I will be opening my intake form very soon, hopefully this week. So any inquiries can be dropped in there. We will ask a lot of questions about your respective products to help direct you to the right service, and then we can talk from there.
Okay, so I'm going to jump back to some questions that were submitted during registration, unless anyone on the line has questions they wanted to shout out in the last 10 minutes that we have here. So in registration, Jason said that he's interested in the process of creating ripe banana powder, taking ripe raw bananas and turning it into powder. Hailey, what are your thoughts about how he might go about doing that?
Yeah, thank you. I think that's a brilliant idea. That's probably one product value added idea, especially with overripe bananas that may just go to waste. So from a product development perspective, how we would go about that is, first of all, if you're already making something at home, what's the process like? And if we were to scale up, what part can we replicate, and what part are we able to condense into one? So in general, what comes to mind is that we've been sourcing the right bananas, making sure that they're relatively consistent, so we can develop a relatively consistent specifications eventually. And as you get that, we will see what we can automate or hand peel, slice, or automate that slicing. Something that I think is worth considering is blanching. So introducing a kill step in order to also decrease enzymatic activity. So if you see some dry bananas might brown in the bag, that will help with that, especially as a powder form. And then we would be investigating into drying options and milling options, and then also packaging. And we can talk about some risks as once after the product gets in the package, what could happen, what could compromise shelf life, like moisture reabsorption, clumping, things like enzymatic activity where it browns, changes flavor, sours, etc. And doing some testing such as pH and water activity for that would be where I would start. And so if you came with an idea like that, we can talk about whether it's consulting to start or going straight into a project where I go on the bench and develop that powder with you.
Lots of possibilities. Awesome. So Mark asked a cottage law question in the Q&A. So he asked about how does the current cottage business law allow home kitchens to produce value-added products and integrate with local food hubs and the center. So Mark, feel free to chime in if you'd like to clarify. I'm not sure if I interpreted the question correctly.
No, that's fine. I'm famous for vague questions to see what the thoughts are in the group. So I'm famous for that. So I think, Hailey, you brought up a really good point. I think the process that happens with a lot of us is there's a lot of situations that we all run into at the home, and we try to deal with it on our own, like these little home recipes that different people have. And then the new cottage law just came in that allows the home kitchen to sell products directly. And that was a big barrier, I think, for the small home innovator, because they kept getting the certified kitchen rules thrown in their faces. And I think what a lot of us are running into is that we're intimidated about trying different things because we're so afraid about the rules of what's going on. And the intent, I believe, of this cottage law is to make easy entry for people to try different things and do it at a small scale and see if there's traction. And I think that the next step is then how do they scale it up? But I don't think we all understand what that new law is. And I think maybe we need to create a roadmap where someone starts at home, has some extra product, comes up with a kitchen, some kind of a recipe in their kitchen, and then maybe does a few gifts and gives things to different people. And then they think about, well, maybe I should make a business out of it. And then they move to the next level. So I think that pathway, we just, there's a lot of barriers. And I think that cottage law was an attempt to reduce the barriers. The more we understand it, I think the easier it's going to be for us. I don't think we understand it yet.
Thank you, Mark. That's a great point. And I know that I'm familiar with the cottage food law in Oregon and California, and those are also still relatively new. And I do believe that there are some statewide interstate variations with the specific regulations. I think that's a great idea to dive into it and create a roadmap or a session or a course or a training material to help empower some of our cottage makers or folks that have an idea that want to start in the cottage setting. Just from the top of my head, I know that there are categories of food products that are regulated or allowed under the cottage food. So some of like jams, jellies, preserved, baked goods, for example, candy. So quite specific, tea and coffee. But then what does that take for someone making a home batch cottage food friendly product to scale into our facility? Or if they needed safety consultation, formula consultation to still keep it in the home, we can definitely offer and develop a roadmap or a training for that. I think that's a great point. And helping to navigate the compliance as well.
Yeah, definitely. Your Department of Health inspector, sometimes they can be a little bit scary, but they really are there to help. So, our inspector has been open to questions that we may have, like everything from super general stuff to very specific situational kinds of things. So we are at the end of our time for today, so we're gonna wrap everything up. This session has been recorded, so it will be available in a few days on the Leeward Community College YouTube website. And then for the prize pack winner, you'll be contacted via email in a few days, and we can coordinate how we get your prize to you. As always, feel free to email us, schedule a tour, sign up for our newsletter. All of that is available on our website. We also have an Instagram page. Our handle is at Wahiawā Food Innovation. So we post a lot of our upcoming events, including these webinars, as well as hands-on workshops and things like our showcase on our Instagram. So thank you everybody for joining us today, and have a wonderful week.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining, everyone.